He signed the divorce papers with a smile, thinking he had traded up by choosing the woman who whispered promises in the dark. What he didn't know was that, at that exact moment, his quiet, exhausted wife had just secured a $50 billion government contract that would change the entire future of their sick child, and expose every lie he ever told. Before the story begins, make sure you subscribe for more shocking real-life dramas. Understood. Avery Jordan learned early that life did not apologize before it hurt you. Growing up in a cramped apartment on the south side of Chicago, she understood the sound of police sirens before she understood the sound of morning birds. She understood the weight of responsibility before she understood the comfort of being held. And she understood the cost of love long before she understood its value. Her grandmother, Miss Eloise, raised her with a steady hand and a sharper tongue, the kind of woman who would pray for you and curse the devil out of your way in the same breath. She taught Avery to work hard, speak softly, and let her actions slap louder than her anger. But she also taught her something else, something Avery didn't understand until much later. A woman who loses herself in love is a woman who forgot her worth, Miss Eloise would say as she braided Avery's hair. Don't you ever let a man dim what God lit in you. Avery carried that message into adulthood, but life has a way of making you forget your own fire when you love someone too deeply. Marcus Jordan entered her life when she was 23 and exhausted from juggling 2 jobs while trying to finish her degree. He was tall, charming, and had a smile that felt like summer heat, warm, bright, and impossible to ignore. He cracked jokes that soothed her stress, listened to her dreams with an intensity she mistook for admiration, and told her she made him want to be a better man. They married fast, moved into a better apartment, and Avery let herself believe she had stepped into a chapter of peace. But marriages don't fall apart in one moment. They unravel thread by thread, quiet and subtle, until one day you find yourself holding a pile of pieces you don't remember breaking. The first thread came after the birth of their son, Zion. He was a small, delicate baby with a soft cry and eyes too wise for a newborn. Avery had imagined motherhood would be sweet chaos, late nights, spilled milk, baby laughter, but nothing prepared her for the fear that came with Zion's diagnosis. Doctors found an immune deficiency that left him vulnerable to infections, and his tiny body didn't fight back the way it should. Avery slept sitting up for months, holding him against her chest, listening to every breath like it was the last one he might take. Marcus tried in the beginning. He held Zion, fed him, rocked him to sleep. But the more complicated Zion's needs became, the more Marcus pulled away. He started staying out late, saying he needed space, saying the pressure was too much, saying he felt like he was drowning. Meanwhile Avery was drowning too, but she didn't have the luxury of backing away. She had a sick child to protect and a household to hold together. She worked nights as a customer service agent, mornings as a receptionist, and her spare moments were spent scribbling ideas for her tech concept on napkins and old envelopes. It started as a simple thought, a system that could automatically coordinate emergency response communication during disasters. But that simple idea grew, evolved into something far more complex, software that could predict shortages, reroute supplies, and stabilize national emergency operations in real time. It was the kind of idea that could save lives. But Avery didn't tell many people about it, especially not Marcus. He had become unpredictable with his moods, swinging between irritation and indifference. Some nights, when Avery finally crawled into bed at 3 in the morning, she would hear the shower running and know Marcus had just come home. She didn't ask where he'd been. She didn't want the lies. And she didn't have the energy for the truth. One day, after 3 straight nights of fevers, Zion's face turned pale and his breathing strained. Avery rushed him to the hospital. She called Marcus again and again. No answer. At dawn he finally appeared, smelling like perfume that didn't belong to her, wearing clothes too wrinkled for someone who claimed he'd been sleeping. "Where were you?" Avery asked, her voice frayed from worry. "Busy," Marcus said, rubbing his temples. "You always blowing up my phone like I'm your child. Your son was struggling to breathe. I'm here now, ain't I?" He sat down, scrolling through his phone before sighing dramatically. "You always turn everything into drama." Avery looked at him and felt something quiet crack inside her. She realized she no longer recognized the man who once promised to protect everything they built. The second thread of their unraveling came when Avery received an email from a major tech incubator program. They wanted to review her design. She had spent months perfecting it, working after shifts, studying research articles while Zion slept on her lap, building prototypes on outdated software. She ran to Marcus, excitement bursting through her like light. "Babe, they want to see my project. This could be huge." Marcus didn't look up from his game controller. That's great. Are you listening? I said it's great, Avery. Why you need someone to clap for you every second? That night Avery cried quietly in the bathroom, feeling stupid for wanting him to be proud of her. A week later, the incubator invited her for a pitch session. Marcus didn't offer to watch Zion. He said he had plans. So Avery strapped Zion into his car seat, drove to the building with sweaty palms, and pitched her concept while rocking his stroller back and forth with her foot. She got rejected. Not because her idea wasn't good, it was brilliant, but because she didn't have the funding or time to build it into a working prototype. She smiled through the disappointment, thanked them, and left the building with Zion sleeping peacefully. As she drove home, she whispered to him, "I'll find another way." She always did. But the biggest thread, the one that snapped violently, came later. Marcus had become close to Tiana, a woman Avery once considered a friend. Tiana used to come over for dinner, laugh at Avery's jokes, hold Zion when Avery needed a break. She always asked too many questions about Avery's work schedule. She always leaned a little too close to Marcus when she talked. But Avery pushed the suspicion aside because she didn't want to believe betrayal could live that close to home. One evening, while folding laundry, Avery found a receipt in Marcus's pocket from a hotel, 2 nights, champagne room service, and a note on the back in Tiana's handwriting. "Last night was perfect. My love." Avery stared at it for a full minute, waiting for her heart to break. But it didn't. It simply went silent. Marcus walked into the bedroom and froze when he saw the receipt in her hand. "So this is what we doing now?" he snapped. "Going through my stuff. You cheated on me with someone we both knew. Someone I trusted. You don't know the whole story." "I know enough." Marcus ran his hand down his face. "Look, Avery, I'm not happy. I've been trying to tell you that for months. You haven't said anything, Marcus. You don't listen. You're always busy, always stressed, always snapping at me about money and doctors and work. Tiana makes me feel appreciated." Avery looked at him with an empty calm. "Then go to her." He didn't expect the softness of her response. It made him angrier. "You not even gonna fight for us?" he asked. "Have you been fighting?" she replied. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 days later he told her he wanted a divorce. He said it casually while pouring a bowl of cereal. He said he wanted to marry Tiana because she was pregnant. He said he needed a fresh start and hoped Avery wouldn't make it messy. That night Avery sat beside Zion's bed, holding his hand, tears sliding down her face. She wasn't crying over losing Marcus. She was crying for the years she spent trying to love a man who didn't know how to love back. The next morning she received another life-changing email. A government branch overseeing national disaster response wanted to review her updated prototype. They had heard about her concept from someone who attended her previous pitch. They weren't offering an interview, they were offering a fully paid trip to Washington, D.C. and a private review session. Avery almost dropped her phone. For the first time in a long time, hope bloomed in her chest like sunrise after a long winter. She asked Marcus if he could watch Zion for the 3 days she needed to travel. He shook his head. "I got plans. Marcus, it's important. Please." I said I got plans. "Ask your mama." "My mother is gone, Marcus." He shrugged. "Then take him with you." Avery looked at her son, who was recovering from a recent infection. Traveling with him would be risky. But she had no choice. As always, she'd carry it alone. She booked the flight, packed Zion's medical supplies, and left the house with a heart full of determination. Marcus didn't help with the bags. He didn't walk them to the door. He didn't say goodbye. On the flight, Zion slept against her shoulder while she reviewed her notes again and again, muttering her pitch under her breath. She was tired, terrified, overwhelmed, but she kept going. When they arrived in D.C., she met with the evaluation team in a secured building, a place filled with suits, badges, and stern faces. She presented with the poise of a woman who had learned resilience through fire. Her voice steady, her words sharp, her ideas clear. She answered every question with the confidence she didn't even know she had. One of the directors leaned forward. "Ms. Jordan, who funded this?" "No one," she said. "Just me. And you built all of this while raising a medically fragile child?" "I did what I had to do." The director nodded slowly. "That's what this country needs." After the session, Avery waited in a hallway, rocking Zion gently. A man in a gray suit approached her with a sealed envelope. "Congratulations, Ms. Jordan. You've been approved for exclusive contract negotiation." She opened the envelope with trembling hands. "A preliminary agreement. Estimated total, $50 billion. Avery's breath hitched. Her knees almost buckled. She stared at the number again and again, unable to believe she was seeing it. The funding, the team, the technology, the future, everything she needed to build the system, to save her child, to change her life, was in that envelope. She signed it with tears streaming down her face. She held Zion close. "We did it, baby. We did it." She didn't know another storm was waiting for her when she got home, one she was now powerful enough to walk through without flinching. When Avery's plane landed back in Chicago, she felt a calm she hadn't felt in years, like someone had lifted a weight off her chest she hadn't even realized she carried. She held Zion close as she made her way through the airport, whispering promises of better tomorrows. The glowing numbers in that envelope were a secret she carried like a flame, quiet, warm, powerful. She wasn't ready to tell anyone yet, especially not Marcus. She needed to move smart, move silent, and move with the kind of purpose that had built her from the ground up. When she got home, Marcus wasn't there. The apartment was a mess, his dirty laundry on the floor, a sink full of unwashed dishes, and a lingering smell of cheap cologne. Zion coughed weakly in her arms, and Avery hurried to settle him into bed. After cleaning the place up, she finally sat down, exhaustion washing over her. She texted Marcus that they needed to talk. He didn't reply. Hours passed. Midnight crawled by. He still didn't respond. At 2:17 a.m., the door opened and Marcus walked in, laughing loudly with someone on the phone. When he saw Avery sitting on the couch, he rolled his eyes. "Why you up staring at me like you're the police?" "We need to talk," Avery said, voice low. "I had a long night, Avery. Can't this wait?" "No." He tossed his keys onto the table and sighed dramatically. "What now?" Avery looked at him steadily. "I went to Washington. I pitched my project. And they want it." Marcus blinked, uninterested. "Okay. Is that it?" "You don't understand," Avery said. "It wasn't just a meeting. It was a contract. A major one. Life-changing." Marcus smirked. "How big?" 20,000. 30. Avery didn't answer. She wanted to know who he truly was before the number shaped his reaction. She wanted to see his heart without money clouding his vision. He scoffed. "Avery, I don't know how many times I gotta tell you this. You're chasing these little dreams like they gonna save us. You ain't building Google. You ain't building Amazon. Stop acting like you're on the verge of something." She felt something cold settle in her bones. It was the moment she knew, truly knew, that Marcus did not deserve to hear her triumph. His disbelief in her had become a habit so deep he couldn't even imagine her winning. And he would never be allowed to hold her victory. "You want a divorce," Avery said quietly. "Let's do it." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So now you're agreeing, after all the drama you gave me?" "No drama," she whispered. "Just clarity." "Well," he said with a laugh, "we can get this over with quick then. I'll talk to my lawyer tomorrow." "Your lawyer?" Avery repeated. "Yeah, Tiana got a cousin who's one. He said he'd help me out." Avery swallowed her shock. He had a lawyer. He had been planning. He was really leaving. And in that moment, all regret, all hurt, all lingering attachment dissolved into dust. The next morning, she filed for divorce before he did. Marcus stormed into the apartment furious. "You think you slick? Filing before me. I did what needed to be done. You petty as hell." "No, Marcus. I'm done." He glared at her, jaw tight. "When we go to court, don't try to take nothing from me. I need my money." Avery almost laughed. Money. He had nothing but debt and excuses. I won't take anything from you, she said truthfully. He didn't know she would soon be worth more than everything he had ever dreamed. In the days that followed, Marcus moved out. He took his clothes, his sneakers, his video games, they took up more boxes than his actual responsibilities ever had. He didn't hug Zion goodbye. He barely looked at him. He simply said, "I'll check in when things settle," and walked out. Zion watched him leave with wide, silent eyes. Avery felt her heart twist painfully, but she forced a smile. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "Mama's here." A week later, Avery received the official contract package from Washington along with the first deposit, an advance payment worth millions. Her hands trembled holding the check. She sat on the edge of her bed and cried until Zion crawled into her arms, hugging her neck. "Why you crying, Mama?" he asked softly. "Because God finally showed us the sun," she said, kissing his forehead. That afternoon, she met with lawyers and financial advisors who broke down the magnitude of what she had stepped into. They spoke about company structuring, patents, security clauses, federal partnerships, intellectual property ownership, and long-term revenue streams. By the time the meeting was over, Avery Jordan realized she wasn't just receiving a contract, she was stepping into an empire. An empire she built with her mind, her struggle, her sacrifice. Meanwhile, Marcus was celebrating his new life with Tiana. They posted pictures online, laughing, clinking glasses, hugging in restaurants. Avery's name never crossed his mind. He felt free, proud even, thinking he had escaped a life he claimed was dragging him down. Until one evening, Marcus was on Tiana's couch scrolling through Instagram when a news alert popped up. Breaking. Chicago innovator Avery Jordan secures historic $50 billion federal contract. He froze. The article showed Avery standing in Washington, smiling in a navy blazer, holding a folder embossed with the government seal. She looked radiant, confident, powerful, nothing like the tired woman he had dismissed as a burden. He sat up straight. "What the hell?" Tiana leaned over. "What's that?" He didn't answer. He clicked on another link. Historic achievement. First black woman to lead federal emergency logistics software. Unprecedented contract value. Millions paid up front. Billions projected annually. Marcus's breath grew shallow. He clicked the comments. "She deserves this. Single mom rising. Incredible queen energy. She's gonna change the world. Where her man at? He must be proud. Hope he didn't leave her. That would be the biggest L of the century." Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. He slammed the phone down and stood up, pacing. "Tiana, did you know about this?" He snapped. "About what?" "She got a $50 billion deal." Tiana frowned. "50 million, billion," he shouted. "With a B." Tiana's eyes widened. "Wait, so your ex-wife is rich? Like, super rich?" Marcus swallowed hard, panic clawing at his chest. "I gotta talk to her." Tiana rolled her eyes. "Why? Y'all divorced." "She might, maybe she'll cut me in." Tiana burst out laughing. "Cut you in? What, like a check?" "Boy, please. You don't understand. I supported her ideas for years." "You ignored her ideas for years," Tiana corrected. "You're always telling people you held her down, but all I ever saw you do was play video games and complain." Marcus felt his face go hot. "You don't know everything." "I know enough," Tiana snapped. "Avery did this alone. And she's thriving without you." Marcus stared at her, then grabbed his jacket. "I need to see her. I'm going to her place." "Don't embarrass yourself," Tiana said. "You already lost." He left anyway. Avery was feeding Zion dinner when she heard the pounding on her door. Her stomach tightened. She knew that knock. She opened the door and saw Marcus standing there, breathing hard, eyes wide with desperation. "Avery, we need to talk," he said. "No," she replied. "You need to leave. Avery, please. I made a mistake." "You made choices, not mistakes. Intentions. I didn't know you were doing all this." "You weren't looking." Avery's voice stayed calm. "You haven't looked at me in years." Marcus tried to step inside, but she blocked the doorway. "I want to be part of your life again," he said. "And Zion's." Avery felt a sharp pain in her chest, but she didn't let it show. Zion cried for you for weeks. You didn't show up. You didn't call. You didn't ask how he was healing. I was going through stuff. You were cheating, she said plainly. Marcus closed his eyes. I messed up. But we can fix this. We can be a family again. No, Marcus. We can't. He opened his eyes, and the panic inside them turned into anger. So that's it. You get rich and now you think you better than me. Avery's expression didn't change. No, I knew I was better than this the moment you walked out. He flinched like she had slapped him. I want what I deserve, he said, voice rough. You deserve exactly what you walked toward, she answered. And you walked away from us. Zion called from the kitchen. Mama, who's that? Avery didn't turn her head. Nobody, baby. Marcus's shoulders slumped. He stepped back, defeated. Avery, please. No. She shut the door softly. He stood on the porch for a long time, staring at the closed door like it was his last connection to a world he abandoned. Inside, Avery returned to the kitchen, lifted Zion into her arms, and kissed his forehead. She had a company to launch, lives to change, and a future to build. Her past no longer had any place in her home. Jamal barely slept the night before the press conference, pacing the living room while Aaliyah finally dozed off on the couch with her laptop still open, her emails stacked with executives and partners congratulating her for the announcement she was about to make. He spent most of the night staring at his own reflection in the darkened window, the streetlights catching the shame in his eyes. He kept asking himself how he had let things get this far, how he had traded 20 years of loyalty for a fantasy he himself wasn't even sure he believed in anymore. Every time he walked past his son's room and saw Jaden's empty bed, a weight pressed on his chest. He would kneel on the floor and whisper apologies to the darkness, but the darkness gave him nothing back. He was the one who had created all of this. There was no one left to blame. By the time morning came, the house felt suffocating. The silence itself was loud. He left early, long before Aaliyah even stirred, and drove aimlessly around the city for almost an hour before ending up at the courthouse again. He didn't know why he went there. Maybe some part of him believed that walking the same hall where he had shattered his family would bring him clarity. Instead, the walls felt colder, the fluorescent lights harsher. He remembered the way Lena had stood perfectly still, not begging, not crying, just looking at him as if she had expected every wound he was inflicting. He remembered how Jaden had clung to her coat, his tiny hand trembling, whispering that he didn't want to go with his daddy's new friend. Those memories landed like blows. When he finally got to the Serenity Tech headquarters, the building was already alive with reporters, cameras, drones, and fans gathering around barriers. The sidewalks were buzzing with whispers about the mysterious founder who had secured the largest health technology contract in American history. Rumors had spread overnight that she was a young visionary, a genius who cared more about saving lives than building empires. Some said she was private, some said she was a ghost, some said she was someone the public already knew under a different name. Excitement thickened the air. Inside, the boardroom was filled with glossy screens, sleek chairs, and powerful faces. The governors and hospital executives were seated in the front, and near the stage, several celebrities known for advocating health reform waited with cameras ready. Everyone stood when they saw Lena appear with security, not because they knew her but because they sensed something commanding in her presence. She wore a long, deep, navy dress and a soft blazer with discreet gold pins. Her hair fell around her shoulders in defined curls, and her face, though tired, glowed with strength. People whispered as she passed. She didn't look at Jamal even once, though she felt him watching her like a shadow that couldn't decide whether to follow or flee. Jaden walked beside her, his hand tucked in hers, wearing a tiny suit with a little silver tie. His chemo treatments had weakened him, but he still smiled shyly when people waved at him. Lena slowed down occasionally to check that he wasn't overwhelmed, whispering that everything was okay. And he nodded, trusting her completely. The press conference began with the governor praising Serenity Tech's breakthrough, calling the company a historic force that would modernize the nation's entire pediatric care system. Lena listened without moving, her posture flawless, her face unreadable. When they finally called her to speak, a hush washed over the entire room. Every camera swung toward her. Every reporter leaned forward. Every official sat straighter, and Jamal's heart pounded so hard he felt lightheaded. She stepped up to the podium with a calmness that didn't seem human. She introduced herself, told the summarized version of her journey, how she had started Serenity Tech quietly because she didn't want fame, she wanted change. She talked about the children she had seen suffer because of poor access to early detection, the families she had watched lose everything because they couldn't keep up with medical bills. She talked about giving her all to build a system that could ease that pain. Then she paused. The room leaned in. She gently placed her hand on Jaden's shoulder and pulled him closer to the microphone. He pressed shyly against her side, and she smiled down at him with warmth that melted the air. She said she had dedicated everything she created to this child. Jamal closed his eyes, swallowing hard. Lena continued, saying that she believed every child deserved life, deserved care, deserved time. She said she had built Serenity Tech to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Reporters, cameras flashed like lightning. They wanted every angle, every word, every second. Then came the twist. The governor asked if there were any personal statements she wished to make before signing the final contract. Lena took a quiet breath. She looked directly at Jamal for the first time. The coldness in her gaze wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was the gaze of someone who had climbed out of the fire and no longer needed to prove anything to the one who threw her in. She said that no one knew the sacrifices behind the scenes. She said she had been betrayed at the moment she needed support the most, abandoned when her son was fighting for his life, lied to when her family was breaking apart. Everyone in the room felt the weight of her words, even if none of them knew the full story. Cameras zoomed in on her face, capturing the intensity. Jamal looked down, his face burning with shame. She said that life sometimes had a cruel way of testing people, but if one held on and kept building, eventually the truth spoke louder than anything else. At that moment, a single tear rolled down Jaden's cheek. Lena bent down and brushed it away gently. Jamal broke. He pushed through people, ignoring the whispers and the cameras, and stood near the steps of the stage with his hands trembling at his sides. Security tried to move toward him, but Lena lifted a hand peacefully, signaling them to stand down. The whole room watched him. Jamal said he wanted to speak. His voice cracked as he asked for forgiveness, not just as a husband, but as a father who had failed. He spoke about how blinded he had been, how easily he had thrown away everything that mattered for something shallow with no real meaning. He said he didn't deserve another chance, but he wanted to be there for Jaden in any way possible, even if it was from afar. Silence swallowed the room. Lena didn't interrupt him. She didn't cry. She didn't soften. When he finished, she said calmly that forgiveness was not a moment, it was a process. She said trust was not something words could rebuild, it was rebuilt only through consistency. She told him she didn't hate him, because hate had no place in the new life she was building, but she didn't owe him a return to the old life he had destroyed either. Then she said something that shook the entire room. She said their divorce would remain final. She said Jaden would not be dragged back into stress or chaos. She said his healing was her first priority, and that stability mattered more than nostalgia. Jamal nodded slowly, tears rolling down his cheeks. But Lena added one more thing. She told Jamal he could be part of Jaden's life, but only if he proved, step by step, that he wanted to heal, wanted to grow, wanted to be a true father, not a convenient one, not a part-time one. She said she would not close the door on him being a dad, but she would not let him hurt their son again. The reporters scribbled furiously. People in the room wiped their eyes. Aaliyah, watching from the back with mascara running down her cheeks, slowly slipped out of the room, understanding at last that she had been nothing more than a lesson he had needed to learn. After the press conference, Lena signed the paperwork and the $50 billion contract became official. Applause rose like a wave. The CEO of Serenity Tech, the woman who had built an empire quietly while suffering silently, stood tall while the world finally recognized her. But the real ending wasn't on the stage. The real ending was when she sat beside Jaden outside the building later that afternoon, his head resting on her shoulder as he nibbled on crackers from his little lunchbox. He whispered that he was proud of her, and she smiled, telling him everything she had created was because she loved him more than anything in the world. Jamal approached cautiously, hands in his pockets, unsure if he should leave or speak. Jayden looked up at him, and for the first time since the divorce, he didn't turn away. He simply said he missed him. Jamal's breath caught. He crouched down and hugged his son gently, afraid to squeeze too tight. He whispered that he was sorry and that he would spend the rest of his life trying to earn the right to be his father again. Lena stood back, watching quietly, letting the moment be theirs. Months later, things didn't magically transform, but they transformed slowly, honestly. Jamal started showing up for every appointment, every treatment, every school meeting. He took parenting classes, therapy, and even volunteered for pediatric cancer events. No one asked him to, he did it because he finally understood what mattered. Lena remained the powerhouse she had become, expanding Serenity Tech across the country, fighting for healthcare equality, advocating for children like Jayden. She didn't shut her heart, but she guarded it with wisdom now carved from survival. And Jayden, with access to the best treatment in the world, slowly got stronger. His hair grew back. His laughter returned. His energy came in bursts like fireworks. He became the face of Serenity Tech's first nationwide awareness campaign, not because he had been chosen, but because he chose to speak. He wanted to tell other kids not to give up. In the final chapter of their journey, Lena, sitting in a rocking chair on the porch of her new home, watched Jayden chase fireflies while Jamal sat a respectful distance away, reading documents about foundation events and future charity drives. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need validation. Life had given her the sweetest justice, peace, purpose, and a future she had built with her own hands. And as the sun dipped over the city lights, painting the sky in gold, she whispered to herself that sometimes losing someone gave you room to find yourself. Sometimes betrayal freed you to rise. Sometimes a broken family could rebuild, not as what it used to be, but as something healthier, stronger, more real. And that was enough. Thank you for listening. Before you go, tell me one thing in the comments. From which part of the country are you watching this story today?